All right, everyone, going to be planting some thornless raspberries. So you can see this is root. It was wrapped in paper towels. And the paper towels, we try to keep it wet the whole time. So I've had these for about a week, but you can tell they're still healthy. They're growing canes under here. Let's talk about raspberries, and the same can be said for blackberries. Whatever I'm going to say for raspberries can be said for blackberries too. So first thing I did though is, look, I hate to weed, so I burned this guy. So this is all burned. I got to burn about 4 more feet. And then I'm going to soak some of my drier ones. Some of these are a little dry. Going to soak them in water before we plant them. So I laid them out because I wanted to see how much more I needed to burn. I'm trying to get about every 4 feet here. So, but let's talk about raspberries and blackberries. Okay, this is what's called a Primocane, and it's a primary cane. And so you can see this cane, it looks dead, right? And you see these new growths. Now they would be under the ground or right at ground level. And the reason they are this color is because they've been wrapped up in the dark. So they'll green up. By the next few days, they'll look, beautiful. So every year, this will put out a new cane. This is the 2nd year cane. This is the 1st year cane. You can see this has been cut. So they waited for this plant to go dormant. They cut it, they dug it up, all right, and they wrapped its roots and got them nice and wet, and then he shipped it, all right. So that's how this comes. This cane is last year's cane. This cane will be this year's cane, okay? So this is really dead. It's just there to hold it up, really, to be honest with you, with the roots. So this cane will come up this year. Next year, it'll have the growth will be out, it'll blossom and it'll fruit. And after it fruits and you pick it, or about the time you start to pick it, it'll start doing this again. It'll put out another set of canes. And then next year, so after these canes have fruited and you've picked them, you cut them away and you leave the new canes that grow. So you get every year, you get a cane that fruits, which is your primary cane. And then after that cane fruits, you cut it back and it grows a new primary cane. So with berries, it takes 2 years to get a crop. All right, so that's the way Primocanes work. They work, you get 1 new cane every year and the old cane gets cut away. So there's a little work at the end of the season, cutting the old canes back and retrellising, but it'll take you all of an hour if you know what you're doing. And so I'll show you how to trellis them up as these grow. We'll do another one on trellising, or how I take care of the plants. So and the structure that I build for them to grow up on, because it's good to keep them rooted. One of the great things about berries, and we'll say this too, is that if you want to be patient, like I'm planting 7 plants, okay? But on another part of my property, I have some blackberries, and I started with 2. The great thing about these plants is you can let these grow out, and once they're as long as they're going to be, they're maybe get 8 feet long. Some of these canes get 6 to 8 feet. I've got some on blackberries that get 10 or 12 feet, really. You'll take them, bend them over, dig a little hole, bury that tip in the ground, and that tip will root itself in. And when it's rooted in, you can give it a little tug, and if it doesn't come out, it's good and rooted in. Then you just go back about halfway. Let's say your cane's 12 foot long, go back about 6 feet and cut it right there. Guess what you got? You got a new blackberry plant or a new raspberry plant, right? So that's the way they work. So if you're patient, you just want to buy 1 or 2, you can, over a few years, multiply your bushes until you have, or your canes, until you have as many as you want. As a matter of fact, the weird thing about blackberries and raspberries is, man, sometimes you plant them and you'll look like 10 feet or 12 feet or 20 feet away, and there'll be a blackberry cane that's grown under the ground and it's popped up somewhere you never thought they would. I used to have them around the outside of my market garden, and I started getting them 6, 8 feet into the garden. I had to keep after them to keep them away from taking over the garden. So they grow really well in the Mid-South. I don't know about your region, but where I live in Middle Tennessee, they grow wild. Wild blackberries are a place where a nice little bug we call a chigger lives, and a chigger will tear you up. So if you see them in the wild and you're not from Middle Tennessee or from an area where you know about chiggers, you need to know about them. So anyway, but these nice little domestic blackberries won't have that problem. So let's go ahead. I got to burn 4 more feet. I'm going to soak these a minute in some good nutrient solution. We'll come back and plant them. All right, guys. Gonna dig a quick hole here for our raspberries. All right. Went and got a little compost for this too. These need to be a little bit bigger holes than we saw when we did our mulberry videos. So, one good shovel full though, if you can get a good, you know, short spade shovel full, and pull it all the way out. Kind of a rocky little spot here, but you can also see how red the clay is, you know, especially in areas I haven't planted in yet. So I do a lot of soil. Let me adjust the camera here. I do a lot of soil amending. The way to think about all gardening really is to stop thinking about growing plants and start thinking about growing soil. Right? Because it's the soil that really matters. Don't cut corners there. All right, so I'm gonna dig this red clay out and toss it to the side. I'm probably not gonna put any red clay back in this hole. So I have some compost here. Let me show it to you. I have some compost here in this bucket. I just got this back from my personal compost pile, which we use chickens to do a lot of composting here. All our composting here, because who wants to turn a compost pile? I don't. And so I've done that for years. I had one of those crank things, waste of your time, don't buy one. I've done composting many different ways. I'll make a video on what I think is the best way for home composting, especially if you have backyard chickens, which backyard chickens is the best way you can compost. So anyway, we'll get back to this video, but I'll make a video about that as well. So I got some homemade compost. I've said this in previous videos, and I want to say it again here. I use my homemade compost around fruit trees. I use my homemade compost for berry plants and things like that. I don't use it if I'm growing lettuce. I don't use it if I'm growing like spinach or, you know, things that can have a lot of splashback on them. Because the chickens do the composting, I'm not sure the temp ever gets up to 160, 170. Plus the chickens are moving things around and they're going to the restroom sort of, you know, as they're moving that pile. So you have some that's going to be, some of your compost will be a little bit hotter than others, and some of it may not have gotten up to the total temperature. So you want to be careful with home composting because you can get foodborne illnesses that way. And so I tend to use my homemade compost on fruit trees and berry bushes. Tomatoes are good, they're high off the ground, especially if you're pruning them correctly, and you don't have a lot of splashback and things like that. You're in good shape. Things that are like cabbage or spinach, things that are low to the ground, I use an organic, but it's store-bought bag compost because I guarantee it got up to the right temp. Okay, we want that temp to be high because I want to make sure we kill all foodborne, all illnesses or viruses or things in the soil that could be that could cause human sicknesses. So just be careful when you're doing that. But making compost at home is certainly a great way to save some money and get you know, the product that you get is really, in my opinion, if you do it well, better than what you get at the store. But so here we go. We're going to take one of our bare root raspberry plants. All right, so that's going to be about the height you want it. These plants right here, if you can see them, these plants right here, this is about the top you want to be at. Okay, so I'm going to take a little bit, then use a small spade here, and I'm going to start filling in the hole a little bit. You can wound these roots up a little bit so the roots will come free on their own. You know, you don't have to, you want to splay them out a little bit, but they're okay if they're bunched up just a tad. So there you go. Now I've got enough in there that pretty much will hold it up. All right, so I've got that. Now I'm going to take just a little bit. Sorry to be off camera here. I've got a little bit of my Sustain organic fertilizer here, and as usual, I'll put a link to these things in Amazon. I like it's a turkey manure fertilizer. Works really good. Sprinkle a little bit of that. You don't need a ton. All right, and we'll finish burying it in. So I will take a little bit of this clay and scrape it back here just because it sets pretty firm, okay? So I'm gonna take it, be careful with those little plants there. And I'm just gonna step on it with my boot. Press that down good. Make sure we're good and stable and standing up. All right, now I'm gonna take it, and I'm just gonna take a little bit of this, and I'm gonna top dress it. Just sprinkle it around the edge. Sorry for making that extra noise here. Okay, now we are good to go. I like to use a little bit of composting as a top dressing. As it rains, it'll wash the nutrients down in there. So we're good. There you go. Planting a nice, see if I can get our camera down here. Planting a nice Primocane thornless raspberry. There we are. I got about 8 more to do. We'll do 1 more of them on camera to get you to see here. So we'll move down. I'm gonna spread my legs here like this. It's about 4 feet. Come down, mark where I want my new hole to go. Get my big shovel. Lots of worms in this soil, lots of worms. That's always a good sign. Worms are really good. Worm castings, worm manure is a great nutrient builder in your soil. There's lots of worms here. I mean, I can see 8 or 10 worms right now. And this hole's a little rocky. It's probably where they built the fence through here. I'm up against the fence. I do like to plant my berry bushes against some fencing or near some fencing. It helps to hold them up to the back. I only have to worry about one side. If I was planting them in an open field, I'd have to do some little trellising. It's a tad bit more expensive. If I use the fence to do a little bit of the work, then we're good. So maybe I'll move this out of the way so you can see better. Turn my camera just a tad. All right. So just about got this hole done. All right, so we'll take another. We've got our canes soaking in some water here. We'll take one of these guys, pull them apart. Try to be careful for the root system. All right, stick it down in there. This time I'm just gonna dump a little on there. Be careful, like I wasn't. Be careful not to break your cane there. Get it back down. Remember, we're gonna come back and get a little bit of our fertilizer. Just a little bit. I'll take a minute and press it down with our boot, make sure it's good and firm. And then remember, I probably won't do this on camera, but remember, you're gonna need to go back and hit this with a good watering once you get them in here. So I'll water them all when I get the whole 7 in. I'll come back and water them all. But for our purposes now, let me move all of the things I put in the way of the camera, because I'm a purely amateur film maker, I guess. There we go. We got all our roots in now. And we look good. And that is how you plant raspberries. This variety is a thornless variety. So I'm gonna go do 5 more of these. You guys have a great day gardening. See ya.